The Order of the Council wishes to advise members of the public that council meetings will be recorded and will be available after each meeting on the council's website. All care will be taken to maintain the privacy of those in attendance. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded by remaining in the public gallery. It is assumed your consent is given in the event your image is broadcast. This includes any filming by television cameras if in attendance is approved by the General Manager or Mayor. Item 3 is acknowledgement of country. I would like to acknowledge that we are here today on the land of the Wamba Wamba Pareppa Preppa people. I would also like to acknowledge and pay my respects to past Aboriginal elders, the present Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who reside within this area and their future generations. Statement of purpose. I've come here as a councillor freely and without bias to represent the views of the community in considering matters before us today, and to vote in a matter I consider to be in the best interest of the community, and to observe the code of conduct and respect the rule of the chair and the views of my fellow council. We have got item 5 with apology. We've got one from Councillor McCraven requesting leave of absence, moved by Councillor McAllister, seconded by Councillor Metcalfe. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Item 6, confirmation of minutes for the meeting of the 24th. They've been distributed. Would someone like to move that they be received? Councillor Hall, seconded by Councillor Wallace. Any questions or comments on those? All those in favour? Against? Carried. Now we have got item 7 is disclosures. We all should have done that. Item 8 is the mayoral minute. That's what I said 7. So, and it's come from myself. The recommendation is that report number 10.7 on the meeting today, request for extraordinary meeting, be removed and replaced with the supplementary report 10.16. This is necessary as advice has been received, which makes the initial report null and void. So would someone like to, I'll move from the chair. We just need someone to second it. Seconded by Councillor Metcalfe. Any questions or comments? All those in favour? Against? Carried. Reports of committees. 9.1.
I'll move the minutes, Mayor. And there's a recommendation there in front of you. At the audit meeting, there was probably a couple of issues that were raised, and mainly by Graham Bradley. He sort of comes in and he is absolutely on the ball, but I think Phil's met with Graham prior to the meeting, and but there was some concern. There were some overruns in the initial financials, and there was around impairment of road assets and things like that. And there's some question over which or whether we're using the correct accounting standards as far as impairment and depreciation. So there was some discussion around that, and there was also discussion around the grant funding treatment. There's some changes in the accounting standards there as well. So there was a couple of major items, two items that sort of have some impact on the financial statements, but I believe the audit has been, and we'll find out more about how that all works out. But, and there was one other one that Graham raised, and was the 1.1 or 2 million for the youth muster, and that had us all scampering for cover. Yeah, see, look at the mayor. So there was some sort of, I think Sonny sort of settles us down by saying she go and find out more about it. But Sonny, you got any comments on that? So that
Yes, thank you. Yes, so over the past 2 years, we have received in grant funding $1.2 million, and that was.
I thought it was more.
Yeah, no,
1.6.
Well, the guys have checked. It's been 1.2. We do expect we may get some more, but we at the moment we've had 1.2 over the past 2 years, and we've passed that money on to the Ute Muster as at the close of the 20 financial year, so the one just gone, we'd passed over $1 million of those funds. And we've got 200,000 that we're carrying, and that's going to be as a liability. So that will be passed on as well.
If my memory serves me right, Barilaro came here and
Yeah,
gave 500,000. That went to 600,000.
Yeah.
And then it came again after Russell's
For,
talked to him
Yeah.
and got $1 million, so that's 1.6.
yeah.
Well, this is the whole thing, Mayor. I think it needs to be cleaned up.
But we've received 1.2.
Oh,
and we're
from-
yeah.
and we're expecting
More to
that
come.
we're going to get more.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, it's basically, we still have, based on the funding milestones, there is still more money to come in, which will come in this financial year.
And just for transparency for all the councillors, that 600,000 did come out of a stronger community.
Yeah,
grant,
that's
the 2.9 million. So 600,000 went out of Hebron River Council to the Youth Muster.
And the other thing that's probably on the audit committee is that our reserve policy is going to be looked at the next audit committee. So Graham was on you got all this money, what are you going to do with it? Here you're going to borrow for the airport. What's going on there? Why are you going to borrow when you got the money? Anyway, so that's the conversation that we.
Here's an opinion.
That's right. Anyway, so no, it's a really good audit meeting. Actually, I think it was a good opening for Phil and kind of actually get the head around a few things. So there you go.
Sounds like Graham hasn't changed.
No, and I can assure you that he's a very, very good asset on that committee. He's very much on the ball.
We had it moved and seconded.
I'll move
Moved by councillor McAllister, seconded by councillor Betts. Any further comments? Questions? All those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 10.3, 10.1, geez, I'm not reading. Is the normal reports that meetings of the mayor and councillors and general manager have had for the month. There's plenty of few. Any questions on that?
and the wardrobe failure.
Any questions? Would someone like to move the recommendation here that we note down?
I'm happy to do that.
Moved by councillor Bull, seconded by councillor Fogarty. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 10.2, resolutions of council. Phil.
This is the usual report, Mr. Mayor, detailing the resolutions of council that have been passed in the, over the recent period, and it also highlights those that have been completed. So just for council's information.
Is there any questions on those? Someone like to move the recommendation that we note the information of those resolutions? Moved by councillor Fogarty, seconded by councillor Wallace. All those in favour? Against? Carried. 10.3, the council appointments.
I'll move the recommendation.
Yeah, looks pretty
Here
good.
for discussion.
Yeah, moved by councillor Fogarty, seconded by councillor Metcalfe. Any questions or comments?
Look, I do, Mr. Mayor, it's in relation to the Retirement Village Committee. And given that that's such a priority and we haven't met for some time, I'm wondering if a meeting can be scheduled as soon as possible so that we can review where we're up to, have a look at what's gone on in the past, review where we're up to, and appoint the 2 community members to that committee. So if that could happen, like I said, ASAP, I think that would be really advantageous. Totally.
There's 3 members.
Myself, Ashley and
Peter.
councillor Betts.
Okay, I think we can organise that, Pat, because I think it's become the top one in the advocacy.
Yeah.
strategy
Oh,
too.
I'm very happy to hear that.
Mm.
Any other questions or comments?
Just with the, one of the committees there, I know that Councillor McCrab has a very strong interest in the airport. I just didn't know whether he'd be probably sit on that committee probably instead of me, because if he,
Instead of you,
well, I just thought he has a lot of interest in that, and always kind of making comment around the airport, and maybe you could just ask the question to him if he wants to, or even had him on as another
we'll do
delegate.
that. Good idea. I've got one question also that the Health Action Group, which I've been sort of on that from its start about 12 plus months ago, is still looking to continue. It's in a bit of there's different dynamics within the different people who sit on that committee. And is there a councillor who would like to sit on that?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, I've been approached by a couple of people through my conveyancing that about my interest in it, and I have raised an interest in it. So yes, I would be happy to.
I would probably still attend as well.
Yeah, that's
Because I think
fantastic, just
but
to
you need
have
to-
that knowledge and, see what we can, work together as a team to try and
It's a
achieve
very
moving
interesting
forward.
statement, that one, because that's not what's happening. But yeah,
I promise you I'll be different.
no,
That probably doesn't
No.
matter.
So
That's your-
mediation,
Just-
mediation with a hammer?
Yesterday it was stabbing the iron in the neck with a blunt fork. No, I didn't do that.
put that on the list,
Yes.
it's for yourself.
We can probably see firsthand the dynamic then.
So, Mr Mayor, there's some question about the Community Gardens Committee, the
Which is
Edgewood
gonna question my
Concert Band.
diplomacy.
Like, are those committees still operating? Or they're going to be incorporated bodies?
Well, that's part of the if I can, Mr Mayor, through you, that's part of the recommendation that was done in the review of all of the committees, but none of those recommendations have been implemented.
Haven't come back to council.
Yeah, because the Māori Arts Centre fits in that
Yes, it
same
does,
category
yes.
as well. And so that's what the committee, the Recreation and Community Facilities Recommendation Committee is to look at that report, to go through that report and establish a plan as to how that can be implemented. So that may change as a result
I'm
of that.
expecting that it will.
Yeah.
So is that just sitting waiting to,
That's also sitting waiting to occur.
to come back to council?
No,
It's
for
been
for
to
them to get
council.
together and
Right.
to look at that report and have a look at that and see what's going to be implemented, what will be challenging to implement, and how will we address those challenges.
Can we make that happen?
Yes, we're just looking at that report in its entirety and just looking at how we're going to resource that within our current resources, because it is a significant project.
Yes. Yes.
Not many.
And some of those recommendations will be quite challenging to implement.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, for you, Mr Mayor, just to let you know, I've
Yeah,
also
but,
been approached about the LHAC
point
committee,
18.
as I expressed an interest 12 months ago to
I can't
Yeah,
believe
that
it's got
committee might
anything
have
to
been,
do with social.
contacted last week asking me to
You talking
attend
about my
those meetings.
diplomacy?
You've been a fine member on that committee, Ollie.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Recommendations here that, well, that we review so that the places we need to get things done, reviewed, then come back to council. Would someone like to move that action? Move Councillor Fogarty, second Councillor McAllister. Any other further comments? All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. 10.4 is annual written returns register.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. This is obviously the returns of interest that you all submitted not too long ago. It's just part of our yearly compliance process that we need to collect those, and the General Manager holds those, and it also forms part of our annual reporting requirements. So we're just asking that council note that the general manager is tabling those annual written return of interest registers.
Right. Would someone like to move that recommendation? Moved by councillor Betts, seconded by councillor Bull. Questions? How come I keep getting emails saying that I haven't filled the return out?
Yeah, I'll just get this out.
Okay, I'll look into that as to why.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
You've probably got a list of all the returns
Yeah, yeah, we have them all.
and then check out, because I just ignored it because
It's not that
I think it's generic.
annual disclosure, because that was very confusing, that there was
There
a
was two.
6 monthly
and 12 months.
disclosure and then an annual disclosure to the election, New South Wales Election Commission. Yes,
Can you check both of
I'll
those?
check that.
Yeah, thanks.
yes. Most confusing. Why would you send one at the 30th of June and then another at the 30th of June?
So we've moved and seconded. Any further questions or comments? All those in favour? Against, carried. Item 10.5, the annual code of conduct statistical return.
Nice to see 0, 0,
Yeah.
0. I'll move the
So-
recommendation.
Moved by
Mr. Mayor.
councillor Fogarty, seconded by councillor Wallace. Any questions or comments?
Zeros are good.
Yeah.
Like zeros. All those in favour, moved and seconded. All those in favour? Against, carried. 10.6, rates harmonisation community engagement material.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now that we have adopted a preferred model for rates harmonisation, we've commenced the community engagement process, and the first part of that was developing some of our material. As requested by council, you wanted to see the phone survey and you know, the key messages, etc. So they're in this report that we're asking council to endorse, so we can continue with the publishing of those.
I'll move the recommendation.
Moved by
Mr.
councillor
Mayor.
Fogarty.
With just a comment.
Yep.
It's just in terms of the, I guess, the process that I wondered, in the way it's written, it looks like the phone survey is going to be conducted fairly well up front. And I just wonder if people would have an understanding of what it's all about, that perhaps we need to get some information out and maybe some discussion out, then have the phone survey.
Yeah, when was the phone survey planned to be?
Thank you. It's planned for November, so this month we will start putting communication out. So the key messages, Q&A, so we'll launch the website, we'll have things going in the paper this month, as well as launching the website as well, so to draw people to the website for further information. So all that will start this month prior to the phone surveys being conducted.
Like you would just say, like on Friday, the Pastoral Times going to have a bit in the one page that we've got in rates harmonisation, and that's really probably the first,
Your newsletter, Mr.
second
Mayor,
time. Yeah,
the newsletter that was circulated had information
Yeah,
about the rates
yeah, and
harmonisation.
I'll give it a go on the radio today when we do that.
You're
But
certainly not going to get true and correct answers. Because
No.
exactly, because they're not going to know. Their first question will be, what are you talking about?
what are you talking about?
How much
Yeah.
is it going to cost me?
Yeah, what's my rate's going to be? Yeah.
Can we put that? What are your thoughts, Tiff, in regard to strategy for communication?
As we discussed the other day, I agree with councillor Fogarty that we need to get some information up before starting the survey. So my recommendation would be we've had the newsletter now, the weekly Pastoral Times ad that we're going to put in. I suggested a direct letterbox drop to people who don't buy the paper and aren't going on our website as well. So I'm not sure of the timeline but if the survey could be delayed, I would recommend at least a month to get some information out.
Social media, Tiff, because everyone's doing social.
Yeah.
Social media, people can share it around, and
Not everyone.
Oh.
That's an option.
Colin will now he's on Facebook. He'll love to share it around. Very interesting. Oh, he hasn't sent me a friend request. yet.
Doesn't know how to do that.
yeah, I think councillor Fogarty has a very good point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mr Mayor,
I think November's
I'll,
a bit early.
I'll take that on notice and see if we
Yeah,
can
just see
reschedule
what we
the
can-
phone surveys.
Yeah.
And we'll just also ask that councillors just have a look at the dates that we're proposing for the community engagement meetings, and we'll discuss those further at the workshop.
Now, I did raise during the week when we were talking about the one in Denilton, whether one meeting is enough, or if we got enough information out to get inquiry and stimulus for people to get off their bum and come into a meeting about rates.
10 meetings won't be enough.
Probably right, councillor Vince.
Mr Mayor, what would be the normal response to a public meeting about something like that?
Limited.
That's what I'm thinking.
Well,
So
could
is
you-
it going to be of any benefit to have?
But you've got to give people the opportunity.
Mm.
Yeah.
Generally, I would say it would probably depend on what the issue is.
What are my rates going to be?
Yes.
It's usually an individual, they'll ring if they find out, they'll get their notice, and they'll just ring
Yeah.
straight away. It's not
Well,
really-
they won't
Yeah.
get their notice until next year.
That's right, but that's
Yes.
when they'll react.
Yes. Yeah.
So that attachment, Mr Mayor, on page 44 of the categories and the ad valorums, is that going to be out publicly?
Sorry, Mark, I didn't.
That,
Councillor Watts.
Through Mr Mayor. It's already in public papers, so it's already out there.
Yeah.
And they'll be part of the key messages within the communication out to the community. And so it's trying to be as transparent as possible without being,
yeah.
it's
well,
quite a
just-
complex matter, so.
Yeah, they can sit down there and just work out how much their rates are going to be for the job.
You asked that question because of what concern?
No, I just thought people have been asking me what's happening with the rates. And I
Okay.
said, well, it's all out there, and I'm just making sure that it was all out there.
Mr Mayor, we're also offers the community an opportunity to phone in, and the rates team will be able to give them information on the personal effect
Yeah.
on them as
Oh,
well.
okay.
Well,
Very
so
good.
one-on-one virtually
That's a good
opportunity.
Yeah, so it'll take, obviously a couple of days to get that information to them, but
How
we're
many
offering
people you got in that? unit? How many people you got in that unit?
One month to send him 603s on that day.
The other thing, question, Mr Mayor, it's like what councillor Wallace raised in attachment 1, page 45, where it talks about the review considers rating assessment against legislative criteria, and then it talks about how there may be some shifts in categories and subcategories. Those dot points didn't make sense to me. Yes. So if they can just be reviewed, because if they weren't clear to me, then I'm not sure they'll be really clear to the general community. I was quite confused in reading those.
So that paragraph. Councillor
Yes.
Fagan, Yes.
Yep.
The outcome of the review really is not to see whether we necessarily need more subcategories, because we've already gone through. that
No, but
exercise.
how they changing didn't make sense to me. The shift in them.
Confusing.
Yes, I found it confusing. So I just wonder if to have a read of that and
Whether it should
try and
be
read
there or not.
if it can be read from and it's hard when
Doesn't
in
really
writing
well.
something that you fully understand, to write it from a position that a person knows nothing about. Yeah,
So make it more layperson.
yes, yeah.
Targeted for the market. Any other questions or comments? Mover and seconder. Moved by councillor Fogarty, we haven't got a seconder yet. Councillor Hall, any further questions or comments? All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Riverina 10.10, River, no,
10.8.
7.
10.7. I've gone past.
What's the question on seven?
Extraordinary
Oh, that
meeting.
we've moved that. Shifted that.
We've moved that to 10.16. We want to deal with that. We may, you've got 10.16 sheet recommendations.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We're asking council to accept the request for an extraordinary meeting on the 22nd at 10 a.m. and also a request for another extraordinary meeting for the 5th of November, also at 10 a.m. The 22nd of October is to consider the Waring Gardens DA, and the request for the 5th of November is to consider the annual financial statements and auditors report.
Recommendations there, someone like to move that? Moved by councillor Metcalfe, second by councillor Ball. Any questions or comments?
It's in our workshops on the fifth.
I said 10 a.m.
And they're at 10 a.m. for both.
No, I don't know.
Yes.
Are we having the workshop on the fifth?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks.
So it will hold the workshop, run the 5-minute meeting and continue. Move second, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. So 10.8. Planning proposal, done that. 10.8. Planning proposal for number 10, Half Lewis Street.
So the report is for the planning proposal to rezone the land, council-owned land for seniors housing. There's a strip of infrastructure land that was related to the old railway lines infrastructure that was there. And this is to rezone it to B2, so the land will be, seniors housing will be permissible in that zone. That was reported to council back in April. And the department, we now need to send it through to the department for them to finalise the plan, the rezoning,
What's SP2?
infrastructure.
I'm happy to move that.
Moved by councillor Bull. Second by councillor Foley. Any questions or comments on that item? All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.
Division.
Oh, division. Councillor Fogarty,
Aye.
councillor Bull,
Aye.
councillor Hall,
No.
councillor McAllister,
Aye, yes.
councillor Betts, councillor Metcalfe, councillor Wallace,
Aye.
and the mayor's. Environmental Services Report for September.
So the environmental services report for approvals issued and animal control details are provided for information for September.
Someone like to move the recommendation with note, the Environmental Services Report?
I'll move the
Moved by
report.
councillor McAllister, seconded by councillor Foley. Any questions or comments on the report?
Oh, it's a comment, Mr Mayor. Congratulations to the staff. The number of applications approved was fantastic and well in surpass of what was approved at the same time last year and in current months. So well done, team.
Through Mr Mayor, it's also a good indicator that 50% of the DAs that are under assessment were received in September 2020. So since we had quite a spike in received applications.
So can we make a point of that in a media release or something like that?
Yeah, it is very nice to go out.
Stop the noise out there about, you know,
How slow things are and how challenging. Yes. Yeah.
I can see Tiffany writing down very clearly.
well, I don't know whether there's a benchmark. There must be a benchmark somewhere, is there? Or-
There'd be a benchmark for us. There'd be an average number of returns.
the number of
over a period of time.
So I think as long as we're operating above that
Statutory days,
benchmark.
40.
From news story.
Mm. No, great job.
Well done, Murray.
Yes.
Good job, mate.
Make sure you pass that on to the team.
Yeah, no, it's terrific. Well, and it's particularly when the team's down at the moment in terms
Yeah.
of numbers.
Under
So
pressure.
great work.
Yes. Thank you.
Move second. We just haven't had a vote by the look of it. All those, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. 10.10 is Riverina Highway Reconstruction Project. Ollie.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So this report relates to some work the council have been carrying out on behalf of Transport for New South Wales on the Riverina Highway over the past 12 months. It's part of a section that they have identified of 4 kilometres in total that requires to be reconstructed, and the intention is to rebuild it over the next number of years. Council did the first 1.5 kilometres earlier this year. They started in March and completed it in July. The next section is 500 metres and will cost about $600,000 to $700,000 to complete. The first section, 1.5 kilometres, costs over $2 million to complete. We are operating as a contractor on behalf of Transport for New South Wales on this project. There have been some issues on the first stage, the first section. The first 1.5 kilometres was completed in 2 sections. The first section was 700 metres, the second one was 800 metres. And when we did the final inspection of the 700 metres, it wasn't to the quality that Transport for New South Wales required. So we have carried out an investigation, and again, it comes up, there's been, unfortunately, things like this generally mean there's a lot of little things that have led to ultimately that we are going to have to rework that surface for the first 700 metres at a cost of approximately $100,000. So this report outlines some of the issues, also outlines the next stages of project. And basically, as it is, we are operating as a contractor. We do need council's endorsement to approve that we actually carry on and complete the next section. The second section of 800 metres, we do have had feedback from Transport for New South Wales that it is some of the best finished road in the area. So again, as the guys, there have been some issues on the first stage. The guys did learn and did take on board all the feedback we got from Transport for New South Wales, and the second 800 metre section has been built to a very high standard. And again, we're going to have to dig up that first 700 metres and just rework it and seal it again.
Thanks, Ollie. The recommendations, or would you like to discuss the issue further?
Yep. What? Discuss.
Councillor Metcalfe.
Just with the 2 sections of the road, and I've discussed this with Phil and Ollie, but are we going to have somebody who's going to oversee both the project in our own staff, or is RMS going to come in and oversee everything that we do now to make sure it complies?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. As part of the project, when we're doing work for RMS, we have to work to their quality system. We work within their systems. So they do have a quality officer who is involved in all the inspections and all the signs off. When the decision was made to actually seal that first section, Transport for New South Wales were involved in the decision. So there was like a committee decision. Our project manager, some of our senior staff, our grader operator, Transport for New South Wales, and Primal, our sealing contract, were all involved in the final decision. And at the time, there was a discussion around whether we should rework it or whether we should go ahead. And unfortunately, the decision the guys made based on weather conditions and other issues at the time decided to take that they felt it was a better chance that it would work, and they went ahead with the work. Fortunately, that has proved to be the wrong decision. So Transport for New South Wales will have a very active part in all the discussions. They do have hold points within the contract, and they do actually come and do inspections as well.
So that first action, then, whether you do it or don't, was decided with who in that decision-making process?
Again, there was a committee, there was representatives from council, representatives, our project manager,
But it basically comes back there to RMS.
No, on the time, Transport for New South Wales
Transport New South Wales.
didn't actually sign the whole point because they were concerned, but they felt it was a risk that we could take. So they didn't actually sign the whole point and approve us to go ahead, but they did say it's up to us to make that call to move ahead, and we did.
Well, why can't we in future take the risk out of council and give RMS the full responsibility to actually make that decision? Because I don't think we really want to be going back there ripping up a road at 100K at council's expense. And I don't know what the consensus around the room is, but I know, because I drive that quite regularly, the road should never have been sealed. And that was from a user's opinion.
So we have, again, I have had very
It's not our
long
road.
discussions
I
with
know it's not our
all
road.
members of the committee and all members who have been involved over the last 6 to 8 weeks. And we've also had a review of our own internal processes for some of our own works as well, where at times the quality hasn't been as good as we'd expect. So we have made some changes to our own processes, and I've made it clear to the project team that unless Transport for New South Wales as our client has signed a whole point in the future, we don't proceed.
So just going on councillor Metcalfe there, it's not at council's expense because there's enough money in there to do this.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, so RMS our Transport for New South Wales ultimately are happy with the outcomes and are happy to work with us to move forward. There is enough a contingency left within the project to cover the cost of this rework. Ultimately, we've lost the cost of the seal, which is about 35. Well, we didn't lose it, but ultimately the cost of the seal is the cost that has to be sort of reabsorbed. If the decision had been made on the day that we were going to wait for suitable weather patterns to rework it, we were going to have to leave the road dry out for about a week to a week and a half, and then come back and rework it. So it was about $80,000 that would have cost to rework that and to have those delays. So, and that was part of the decision process at the time. Do we wait and rework it, or do we just complete it this week and seal it? So ultimately, the seal, that's at about $35,000, is what we're actually having to do a second time. But there is sufficient funding within the project to cover all those costs.
Through Mr. Mayor, there's been a lot of lessons learned documented in this process, and there's been some changes made in terms of more active supervision and more clear governance, direction around decision points, which will minimise the risk of this happening again.
Yeah, because I just feel that we don't want to be seen as the scapegoat that we may lose a lot of RMS contract work, because I do realise it's a big. Well, it does reflect on our
Because if
staff
you-
too.
Just as you go back to the basic premise of a contract, there's someone who manages the contract and someone who performs the contract. The manager of the contract, RMS, or sorry, Transport New South Wales, they should be telling you how high to jump. And if the contractor can't conform, the contract's finished.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's why I deliberately asked the question. Were they should have been the body
Well,
to
that's
say,
what
this is what we want.
exactly right.
And I think that needs to be learned and for future contracts, if there are any, which I hope there is, that type of arrangement needs to be stated very clearly, because they've just weaseled their way out of it.
But you also look at it in the sense that if they're not going to approve to sign off on it, why would we? When it's their project, you know what I mean? And to me, the perception to the community is, the community don't know whose road it is. The perception is, it's our workers out there, it's our shirts, it's our council staff that ultimately is going to get the bomb for this, you know what I mean? But your average Joe Blow on the street's not going to go, oh, that was a Transport New South Wales road and the poor blokes just were the suckers that had to do the job. I think the perception comes back to us and what our quality standards and things are. So moving forward, what now are you going to do to fix it? And whose decision is it as to how it's going to be fixed? And is it outside who made the decisions in the first place?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as a starting point, again, it's been made very clear that if Transport for New South Wales as our client don't sign off the whole point, then we don't proceed. So they have a very, very detailed, and one of the big costs associated with any work for Transport for New South Wales is their quality system. It's taken us nearly a year just to build the documentation that is required to deliver a project, which includes all these quality systems and checkpoints. And basically, there was a whole point. It was meant to have been signed by the client, and the decision by committee on the day was, let's have a go.
Yeah, but who now has decided how to fix the road?
So basically, it has gone back through Transport for, so we did look at, before we decided that we had to rework it, we have been working with Transport for New South Wales, with their project manager, their design team, and our own design team to look at several different options. We did tried to see if there was a possibility to use a different type of seal, and what's it called, a slurry seal, to actually redo the surface, and there is new technology available. And again, Transport for New South Wales were happy for council to try this new surface, but on the proviso that if it didn't meet their requirements afterwards, we'd still have to rework it. So really, at that stage, I sat down with the team and said, guys, we cannot take on that additional risk. We have sufficient funding within the current project to rework it. I took on board, again, made it very clear that this is something I will have to discuss with council, and we will have to go out to the community, because it's not something that we should try to cover over.
No.
Basically, and really, we need to be very clear that we did look at multiple options, and it was a final decision that, again, as a team, we sat down and said, we're not prepared to try something new that Transport for New South Wales, again, aren't prepared to sign off as a client. So we could have gone and spent $50,000, put this new seal surface over it, which, if it works, would have filled all the potential ruts and voids. But and then we would have still had to rework the transitions. But I said that's not an acceptable risk for us to take again.
So have you chosen how to do the road? Is that what you're saying?
Basically, yes.
So what?
So no, sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Go on.
It was, again, this has been discussed and agreed with Transport for New South Wales.
So they approved your actions?
Yes.
Okay, it's because there's, so now the opposite has happened in council. Chris Street, Victoria Street, where we're
Wood
the
Street.
owner of Wood Street, the owner of the contract, and yet we didn't look after the contractor or direct the contractor strongly enough to get an outcome that we should have had now. So there's two, so I'm just saying, you've got to really know who's responsible for what during the process. And it's it should be a lesson learned for
Through you,
everybody.
Mr. Mayor, that's again something that we have done a considerable amount of work since this year. So because of concerns, we had a nearly half-day meeting with everybody involved with projects a couple of months ago, where we did a full lessons learned on a review of all our projects and issues like that have come up. We have made some considerable changes to our internal practices in relation to how we document quality standards within our contract documentation. And we've also been going back to making sure that when we actually do the initial design and scope, that we don't miss some potential issues. So we're, again, we have made changes. And really, again, with the guys now, we have done a bit of internal training just to make sure the guys have the capacity to do the right inspections and right checks. And I don't feel we need to go to the quality documentation that we have for our Transport for New South Wales, but we are working to make sure that we have, as a minimum, a set of quality documents that we check for all our projects to make sure that we're not having some of the issues that we had this year.
Councillor.
Yeah, on two parts to my question and comments. It's probably the bigger question now is I think council probably need to review their whole thinking around, do we want to be a contractor for RMS? Is it something we should be exploring further, or should we be going back to our core businesses and looking after our own roads and putting our teams involved totally into that?
Yeah.
I don't know how long our contract is. We discussed that at I think last year about the RMS contracts, or Transport New South Wales, whatever they're called now this month. But that's something I think, no, that's not being disrespectful to our teams. There's clearly there's faults on both sides. There's got to be faults on both sides. We've done the work, we haven't done it to a standard. So we've got to take some responsibility around that. Yeah, they haven't probably given us the clear direction and signing off on it, but the committee have made a risk factor, and the risk factor's failed in terms of the decision. So we're the ones that have basically took the risk there, and so we've got to wear that. My question now is the ongoing ripping up of the road coming into our busiest time of the year. I want to know what timeframes that this is proposed, because I said if it's going to be happening over Christmas, that will be a double whammy for the community. They put up with enough there. I think there was such a slow process to build that whole road out there, to go through another Christmas with stoplights and waiting and inconvenience, particularly when we're trying to attract New South Wales visitation into our town over Christmas. That's going to come a lot of that from that road. Is there an opportunity to delay that till February? I don't know what the timeframes are.
What's the timeframe?
26th of October to March.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
so
On
it's
board out
right.
there already.
that's just ridiculous.
That's what the time frame is to build the next section.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, part of the issue that had come up last year is ideally roads like that need to be built during the dry months.
Yeah.
It was delayed last year. We were originally meant to start in February, and again, not through councils, through that process of working through all the contract details with Transport for New South Wales. It didn't start until late March. And then we had a wet winter, which is the worst thing we have to do. We still haven't finalized that program, so basically it won't take that long to, that full length of time to do it. We are working through the process. We are also working through with the final contract details with Transport for New as to which we do first. Do we build the next section first, or do we rework that front section? So all those elements are still being worked through with Transport for New South Wales. But you are talking, we will be doing them again in two sections. We'll either aim to get the new construction completed by Christmas and then do the resurfacing after Christmas, or vice versa. But again, we can discuss with them the opportunity to have a break if we need to over the Christmas period, that for that 4 or 5 week period over Christmas, that we don't do any works, and we just need to work through that with them.
Councillor McAllister.
Mr. Mayor, I think we should move on. I'll move the recommendation, but I think the learning from all this, and that's where Ashley was a bit, was the fact that we as a council need to understand the risks, the opportunities to make money, the whole thing like that. And I can remember the good old days when, you know, you got an RMS contract and you carted dirt for 2 months and you made 400 grand and you went home sort of very happy. Now, one of the things that came out of the audit meeting was the fact that, you know, Graham Bradley will sit there and say, well, you got all this money in the bank, you're only getting 1%. What are you going to do? You're going backwards. You know, you've got to create some new business somewhere along the line. Now, you know, RMS was always a new business that the Conago Shire utilised very well. We used to use, you know, private works. You know, we now have IT facilities that may be an opportunity for us to share with other light businesses and things like that. So truly, I think we need to take a really hard look at the contracts we enter into, because, you know, Ollie, you said it yourself, you know, they're no profit contracts. Well, if they're no profit contracts, why are we playing there? You know, why aren't we out servicing the roads that sort of got cut up this year because it was a bit wet? So I think we just need to stand back, have a good look at this, and Phil, this is a good opportunity for you to just stand back and say, as a council, when we get everything down to pat, we know what we are and how we operate, you know, where's the opportunities for us? And those opportunities have to be money-making concerns, and they shouldn't have a lot of risk attached to them. So let's learn a lesson out of this. And Ollie, I wish you luck with the reconstruction, because if the Bureau of Meteorology is right, well, we're going to line in you and you won't get around to getting it sealed. So
Never
you know,
right.
these are the things that you just have no control over. So let's just move on and just learn some lessons out.
I think part of the discussion is that we don't want closures or slowdowns over a period of time over Christmas. You know, so, you know, I'm almost saying, say, from early December till late January, the road should be open. Might have 80k restrictions or whatever it might be, but you can do stuff. You don't necessarily have to have it sealed, but that's a key period of time.
Yeah, so that's what Mark taking
Falls in
notes
line
down
with what
there.
Ash was talking about.
So, yeah, definitely take it on notice to, see if we can work into the project plan that there's an open period over Christmas where there's limited overwork to make sure people can get through.
RMS haven't got a finish date.
So I'll take Mark.
Sorry.
Do we have a completion date yet set for that contract?
No, just at the end of the financial year at the moment. And under council's road occupancy licence, we can't do works on the state highway over that Christmas holiday period anyway. So it's something we do need to go back to Transport New South Wales and our team.
understand, Mr Mayor, the wording on the visual boards is to the requirements of RMS, the Transport for New South Wales, or Roads for New South Wales.
All right, well, councillor McCallum has removed the recommendation. We've got a seconder.
Yeah, I'll second.
Deb, any further discussion? I think there's a lot of points there that you need to make sure you document. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carry. Item 10.11, swim centre fees and charges for this coming season. Oliver.
Mark.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So councillors are aware, council's got a contract with a community group, Glenelg Open Pools Incorporated, Peter Pools Incorporated, to operate the swim centre for a 3-year period. This is the 2nd year. As part of the processes around it, we bring the proposed fees and charges to council just for noting. The operators take all the money over the gate and they set the fees, but the contract does allow for the limiting of what those fees are. So bring them up to council just so the council are aware and are comfortable that the fees aren't increasing mainly above CPI. This year, the community group have noted there'll be no increase in the fees. Part of that is, as is in the report, regarding sort of COVID and that, which is appreciated. Another part is that the fee structure and increases is linked to CPI, and my understanding is that's pretty much zero to maybe even deflation at the time that you calculated. It's based on the Sydney one. But either way, council staff feel that's a good outcome for the community, and ultimately, you know, it's an impost on the group that operate the pools, which they're happy to take.
Thanks, Mark.
I'll move the recommendation.
Moved by councillor Wallace, seconded by councillor Metcalfe. Any questions or comments?
I think
Good
it's
to see, a good positive note to say that we're holding the fees static. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. 10.12, plan of management for multiple reserves.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Council aware, been working through council's plans management for the Crown lands that it's trustees for. So a group with a report this month of 11, mainly in the rural areas, which will pretty well finish up the specific reports for the rural reserves. The intention is to finalise all the plans of management at next month's November meeting, which is mainly just the generic reports, just the basic community use of land, and there's 1 or 2 specific ones, but they'll all be finished up in November. So the plans of management reflect the sort of the current operation and how with the reserves we've just read what's happens now with them, and if want to change that into the future, it'll need a specific process with community consultation to do those changes. But I am aware there's one reserve that we do need to clarify.
Thanks, mate.
Well, I'm happy to move that those reports be adopted, but make the amendment of change of photo, just have the Conago Hall, not the Interpretive Centre, and have an extra dot point that removes any reference to the community group being responsible for the Interpretive Centre at Conago.
Right.
Yeah, because that's really quite a separate entity.
Comment?
Councillor Metcalfe.
Just want to know, when did we include cemeteries in the reserve management? 123 Blighty Hall Football Ground Cemetery.
Then we've got the Bermuda.
I know we're not
Berubin is a cemetery.
I know we don't have a cemetery up there yet.
Yeah.
No, it's just a typo, don't worry.
Yeah, no,
I'll take a measure of performance.
Well, we could be leading towards a cemetery.
No.
Had a few threats, have you?
So is there a cemetery there?
No,
No, it's just a typo.
it's just a typo.
And there won't be when the plan goes up to Karen. Thank you, councillor Mick.
All right, a couple of small alterations there.
All good.
Moved by councillor Bull. We've got a second. Councillor Metcalfe. Any further questions or comments on those plans? Councillor Wallace.
Could I ask, what's the story with the bushfire plan on these reserves? Are we responsible for that?
Through you, Mr Mayor, thanks, councillor Wallace. So they've got to work in conjunction. So we're responsible for the reserves and RFS is responsible for the bushfire management. We've had a discussion with staff from RFS about sort of issues with the reserves and especially around the vegetation and that which RFS have told us has been allowed for in their bushfire management plans. You're aware that the bushfire management plan for this zone at the moment is in limbo.
Yeah.
A draft that's now sort of over 3 years old because it was meant to come in just before the mergers, and the mergers have the internal issues with RFS regarding where Marty Wedger already went in terms of the merger. So yeah, that complicates it, that at the moment there's not a set bushfire management plan.
Just sort of more thinking of something like the Berubin Cemetery or the Lang where the grass is this tall. It's obviously our responsibility to prevent bushfires in there.
It's our responsibility to manage the land. So if there's a risk around bushfire or fuel loads or that on that land, not being part of sort of the strategic fire breaks and that, it's 100% council there to manage that.
And secondly, have all these reserves got legal access, as in road access?
All the reserves are on their own parcels of land.
Yes.
And all parcels of land are meant to have legal access to the public road. In going through them, and there's been quite a number of reserves I've found that I didn't think we had, and some of them are right in the middle of things, but they do all have at least a paper road.
Yes.
On the map.
Yeah.
Whether it's a constructed road is a different question, but they have.
No, that's fine.
access.
Thank you.
Like that one at Stone Plains, mate, there's no road that goes into that.
No, or the Berubin Cemetery. All that.
Any further questions on those? Moved and seconded. All those in favour? Against? Carried. 10.13 Asset Management Plan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's just a report provided for an update for councillors regarding the asset management plan process. Following the reevaluation, council staff have undertaken a project to update the asset management plans. Council has six plans. At the present time, council staff are reviewing and updating the transport asset management plan with the idea that they will fully complete that. So we understand that the data that needs to be updated and the graphs and tables that go into the plans. And then once that's finalised, the remainder of the plans use the same template. So it'll be a quicker process to finalise the rest of the plans. Anticipated that we'll complete that sort of before the end of the year, so that the information out of that will be able to feed into the 21-22 operational plans and budgets moving forward.
All right, the recommendation, thanks Mark, the recommendations there, that we note this report and we'll receive a further report in December. Someone could like to move that recommendation? Councillor Wallace, second by Councillor Betts. Any comments or questions? All those in favour?
Right.
Against, carried. 10.14, keep it going while you're hot, Mark.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So this report is regarding plan and management for the Murray Valley Industry Park. It was brought forward previously to council some time ago with issues around native title. So council's received independent advice regarding how to manage the native title, and with thanks to both Crown Land staff and also the consultants that helped us out, are able to get to a position that council can now move forward with the adoption of the plan for the industry park, and then able to use that land once the plan of management is adopted, including leasing and other uses.
I'll move, Mr. Mayor.
Moved by Councillor McAllister,
Yeah, I'm happy.
second by Councillor Bull.
Can you just let LLS know that this is in train, because they've been asking about opportunities for leases and things like that. And we haven't been able to do it because this wasn't in train.
Yeah.
Further questions?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Fogarty.
Yes, Mr Mayor, look, I think this is really timely, and for me, it raises the question that do we need to have a discussion on the value to council of retaining this piece of Crown land? From my recollection, it was a piece of Crown land that was operated by the Department of Agriculture. When they closed down, they met with Deniliquin Council and suggested to Deniliquin Council that Deniliquin Council take over this portion of Crown land. And a plan was worked out in conjunction with TAFE, New South Wales, that a partnership would be formed between TAFE and Deniliquin Council to actually operate the parcel of land as a training venue or an opportunity venue. From my recollection, I can't see any value that this. TAFE has changed. TAFE is no longer in that space. I haven't seen any value in council retaining this piece of land since that inception. Nothing really ever eventuated from that partnership concept. And I see this as quite a liability to council. And I wonder, do we need to have a discussion on, do we really need this parcel of Crown land, or should we hand it back to the Crown like the Department of Agriculture wanted to offload it to somebody else? And I'd like to see that brought to a workshop discussion to see what's the value to us as a council in retaining this portion of land.
Understood, and it might be an opportunity, as you said, Norm, for LLS.
Well, I think at the moment we're very bad tenants at the moment because we're just creating a noxious weed.
Yes, yes, we do.
So those sorts of good citizen type arrangements on Crown land need to be addressed, and probably, Pat, I would extend it to the other Crown land leases that we own around airports and things like that. You know, like, I think you should have a look at the whole lot of them, because they're going to be difficult to get out of that. That's the whole problem. Like,
well, I know it's still,
that's the big issue.
yes, it's part of passing the buck.
What are the other opportunities, I think, is the
Oh,
way
yes.
that's a good way to work through.
Yeah.
But I think, Norm, the whole thing is, you know, like, you know, that one that's, you know, been rehabilitated out the back, you know, there's people who are interested in leasing that already. There's, you know, even around the airport, I'm pretty sure that people would be interested in leasing or something like that. So there's the other options, Pat, but I think we need to be proactive in actually dealing with it.
Yeah.
But you know, and you know, you couldn't do anything because of the merge and the requirements under the Crown Lands Act to actually get all this stuff documented correctly, and so we haven't been able to actually do anything because LLS has been asking about the parcel for some time. So yeah, let's sort of line them up and
Mhm,
working out what we can do with them.
mhm.
So in our companies, we'll take it to a workshop and.
Yeah,
work
have a
through it.
look at, yeah.
With overall, just not
Mhm.
Murray Valley Industry Park, but all around.
All of them.
Mhm.
Yeah, initially, I mean, I worked there with TAFE and with the Department of Education, and we had expos on technology, and it was fantastic for a number of years, but it's certainly not being used at
The
all
seed
now.
bank's still out there.
The
Seed
seed
bank's
bank
still
is a
there.
vital part of
And
the
that, and that
LMS.
was one of the things that LLS were looking at in trying to move the seed bank into a more dynamic business type case, which is an oxymoron.
Is it
It's an
LLS?
oxymoron in a government agency, Norm. But essentially, there was some thoughts of utilising that extra land and putting in, say, irrigated seed banks that could get through droughts and things like that. So your seed collection was more dynamic. You could sort of do a bit more planning, and then you could sort of build a business case around that. But that has issues as well, because some people think that a plant growing under irrigation and a plant growing on the dryer become two different things.
But is that a type of a discussion you could open it up and talk to rice growers and those type of things for?
No, don't even go there.
Okay.
That was tried many years ago, actually, and it failed dismally, so don't even go there.
Oh, we also went through the exercise of having covered avocados and
Yeah,
covered
yeah,
other
no,
crops.
don't
like it
even go
was- Yeah, there were lots of things looked at.
If you can't get a commercial lease, try and get rid of it.
Workshop.
Yeah,
Taken on notice.
we've had it moved, the recommendation moved and said, we've got to change that recommendation?
Well, I guess we
No,
have to adopt
We
the
have to
plan.
adopt the plan
You've got to
of
adopt
We've got to
that so you
adopt
can
the plan
move
of
forward.
management. The plan of
management, and
management is
then,
that we workshop through
yeah,
the future. Right,
yes,
okay.
yeah.
You got the other plans of management are coming through for that rehabilitated tip, the whole thing. So once you've got your plans of management, you can actually do something.
Mm, mm.
All right. Any further discussion or questions? All those in favour?
No.
Against, carried. 10.15, major projects program, October update. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just again, this is our monthly update on how the projects are tracking. Just some notes, these one that's our yellow or red, Netball Association, we've gone back to our contractors that we got quotations from, and we're just trying to see if there's any of them, because none of them are based in New South Wales, to see if there's any of them we can actually try to work with them to get them permits. And even if it's at this stage a difference in cost of $5,000 or $10,000, we're going to just try and get somebody through as quick as we can and get that project finished and get it back moving. We are out to tender on the new dressing rooms at the moment, and I think that closes this week. And again, that'll keep all the projects down in Memorial Park moving. Once we talk about Memorial Park, the seats have arrived and the new fencing, which is the crown now money. So we've actually finished that new entrance. We are just doing a reconciliation on the budget at the moment. We might be able to, because it's one of these fundings that we need to expend the full funds. So if once we've done a reconciliation of the cost to date, we think we might be able to do a bit more curb and gutter down on that entrance over the next few weeks. But again, those projects are all moving pretty well. On the drought projects funding, they're all yellow because at the moment, originally that work was meant to be finished by December. Those projects are all moving now. We all have, again, we've had a couple of team meetings on them. We have PMs working on them all, doing the work in the background. But we have had a note from the funding that they accepted it was unreasonable to ask us to have the work finished by December. So we have to go back now with a request to extend the deadline. So again, we've just noted them as yellow because of that, but we have already had it in writing that they will extend it once we make a formal submission. So the team are just working through that submission to request the extension of time. So all those projects are now moving. All the latest projects over the last few months, the local roads and community infrastructure. Pretty well, yeah, we have PMs moving on them, project documentation, we started designs, and again, we're working through any issues that we have. Some of the works just for Waring Gardens, where the toilet blocks and the rotunda as part of the discussions during the week. With Heritage, I did raise it, do we need to go for DAs for some of those works, but they've given us guidance that we can apply for exemptions under maintenance, which again, we'll have a separate meeting later today to discuss that process. And hopefully that'll speed up the process because we have the designs done now, we have the surveys done. If we can get an exemption, it'll help us get that work done pretty quickly as well.
And that'll get the only red one in the report off the,
Yes.
to yellow or green.
Yes.
Just a query, I just
Councillor
heard it on the grapevine, we've got an issue with the pools, with the small middle pool. Is there an issue there with, that some of the works wasn't carried out to a proper standard?
Do you want to answer that, Mark?
Yeah, through. Yeah, thanks, councillor Hall. So just in our normal preparation work for the pool, we've seen some issues with cracking and that in the shell of it that we're repairing, and there were some concerns also just with the delivery pipe that we've gone back to the contractor who did the work, and at this point in time we're pretty well at the end of the 12 months defect liability period. So we had to go and do some camera work just to check that it's all good. There were just some concerns that we had with that work. There's some whether the contractor can actually come and do the work. But we're proceeding with those repairs because we can claim it against security that we're holding, or also invoice them if the amount of work goes over the security. So there are issues that council staff at the moment with the local contractors are getting on top of. The pool will still open at the start of November as it normally does, and in terms of the reference back to the original work, we're having that discussion with them and highlighted to them that we do consider some of this work defects with the original contract, and we'll manage that.
So will it be open or closed when the season starts?
1st November it will be open.
And right through?
Right, yeah, right through. No, we've done some good work with qualities and heaters, and it's been an interesting period.
Major projects. Thanks, Ollie. Any further questions on the major projects here?
Is there any timeline on the Maud Road ceiling?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so we will be doing monthly updates. So at the moment, we are starting the process to engage the geotech and designers. The intention is not to start construction work until around next April, May time, because we hope I think it's February. We're hoping to go to tender on that, Mark.
Yeah.
So we've a lot of the background work done now. So it's basically getting the geotech and the detailed design complete. So we're hoping to be in a position to go to tender February.
Does Transport New South Wales have a part in this one? No. What about signing off and?
No, we'll manage this project ourselves completely.
It's a regional road.
It's a regional road.
To the new standard.
So someone's going to have to sign off.
It's a regional. We manage regional roads. We have them on our ass as well.
Don't worry, they haven't learned lessons.
Well, let's hope we have learned lessons.
So we will be going to
new
external
standard.
contractor, and again, we will take on. So we have tightened up a lot on our own quality requirements for works as well.
Yeah, so we're going to go for contract.
Just a query, just like some of these ones, like they're kind of not dragging on, but I know that they're in project design works like I'm all for kind of trying to get in short time wins to the community, say, yeah, we're getting a lot of this stuff out, and they can see things are progressing reasonably timely. Like the off-leash dog park, I thought would have been something that we could have had pretty quickly done. Like, is there a timeline around that? Was it have to go through a project design and all this type of thing?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just resources. Again, I'm trying to focus on getting the projects with the longer lead-in time started first. So
but is that something that we've decided we're doing? Was it one of these contracts we have to be, we the contract.
Again, it's one of the ones I haven't gone into a huge amount of detail. I've appointed a PM to start actually doing the paperwork.
Yeah.
We do have some initial work that was done by the group last year when Julie was still around. So we'll be taking on board that, but again, the likes of the dressing rooms, the likes where we do have to look at DAs, where we have to look at heritage and anything like that. I focused on getting those ones moving first because they've got bigger lead-in times. This one is one that we'll be able to turn around pretty quickly. But I would just, again, we've a lot of projects and we've got 4 or 5 PMs to try to help deliver them all.
Okay.
I seem to be using Edward River Oval as an off-leash park at the moment anyway.
Oh, it always has been, yeah, that's right, but just, yeah.
Any other questions on the major projects update? Someone like to move the report be received? Moved by councillor Fogarty, seconded by councillor Wallace. All those in favour? Against, carried. So that finishes our general meeting. We need to go to confidential council. Would someone like to move that we move into confidential council? Moved by councillor Wallace, seconded by councillor Metcalfe. All those in favour? Against, carried. Item 13.1. Oh, hang on, we've got to wait.
Norman's getting hungry down there.
Hangry.
Soon as I get hungry, angry.
Cranky.
Hangry.
It's like,
Hangry.
it's like kids, they get hangry.
We're live.
I'm angry.
The sandwich monster appears.
That's right. And it's genetic, actually,
That's
that,
13.1.
that. It's genetic. It's a
Right, as a
genetic
result
trait.
of the confidential council matters, the 13.1, which is the Russell Street reconstruction, the matter is considered to be confidential. Get the right document. Sorry, people.
Thanks, Michelle.
Adopts the recommendations of the council accepts the attender submitted by Miller Pipe and Civil Proprietary Limited for the contract, Russell Street construction. Authorise the general manager and mayor to sign up and affix the common seal of the Edward River Council to the contract documentation and delegate the contract superintendent to approve variations up to a maximum of 10% of the contract value to allow any issues that may arise on site. Moved by councillor Metcalfe, seconded by councillor Betts, carried. Item 13.2 is a sale of the land in lots 33, 34, 35 and 36 to Sale Yards Road, Deniliquin. The recommendation is 1, authorise the general manager to accept the current offer for the sale of lots 33, 4, 5 and 6 Sale Yards Road to Reece Tremble Concreting and Engineering. 2, require the contract of sale to be conditional on a development application being submitted within 12 months of signing the contract for the purpose of industrial use and development. 3, include a buyback clause within the contract. And authorise the general manager and mayor to sign and affix the common seal of the Edward River Council to the contract documentation. That ends the council meeting. Oh, moved by that item 13.2, which moved by councillor McAllister, seconded by councillor Metcalfe, and was carried. All right, I'll officially close. Thank you for your participation and interesting meeting. Thank you, and I'll close the meeting. Thank you.